We did get to see Michigan in what I like to call the third preseason game, 31-6 against Bowling Green. And of course, what everybody's talking about is, JJ has 2 games that are, in my opinion, nearly perfect performances in terms of completion. Still has an 82% completion across all 3 games, but obviously did throw 3 interceptions. And so my question to the panel, and I'll start this time with Tanner, is cause for concern?
No, I think it was just more annoying than anything. I was at the stadium, you're just the first one. And I think it's been discussed on Twitter and, I listened to a lot of different podcasts and breakdowns. It seems like AJ Barner maybe took his guy a little too deep into the end zone where he was supposed to be a little more shallow for a clear out to get to Roman. JJ probably could have waited a half second on that throw. It would have been a touchdown to the back pylon. I think in a vacuum, you can look at each individual interception and, say this is all very coachable. And even when you put them all together and kind of the whole performance from him on Saturday, it is what it is, right? I mean, we've seen what JJ McCarthy can be. He's not very turnover prone. This is his second career game with 2+ picks. Obviously, the other one was in the playoff game against TCU. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate to kind of see some of those things rear their head a little bit. But I think watching those first 2 games, he just had such control of the offense. And it felt like he was pressing a lot, which you hadn't really seen from him. Even in that TCU game, I mean, poor throw, poor read. I mean, the one pick 6 was a deep out, long throw. And the other one, I don't think he saw the linebacker right. And so those are obviously mistakes, but it's not like he was really pressing. I think in this one, he was trying to get it all back. He took a deep shot to CJ, which if he threw it to Roman on that second pick, it's probably a touchdown. And then the last one, hey, man, just get it out of bounds, right? Like, I understand you've got Colson Loveland there. Let your 6'6" tight end make a play. But you're rolling, you're trying to throw across your body, just throw it out of bounds, throw it up into the stands and move on because it was only 2nd and 5. So, obviously not great, but I still feel the same about this team that I did, Saturday at 3:30 or whatever. Like, they're still one of the best teams in the country, and I feel very confident that they'll get it figured out, especially with Harbaugh coming back this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, it's like, it did seem like he was sort of pressing a little bit at times. I think the first one was maybe more careless than anything. He just didn't, take that extra second like you're talking about there to make the right decision. But, the other 2, and really I thought there actually could have been a 4th one. I thought that tip pass touchdown on the flea flicker to Cornelius Johnson, I thought that should have been intercepted. I think against a good team, it would have been a better DB probably would have picked that off. And would have had a better tracking on that ball. But that's not what happened. But I'm not concerned. No, I think, like you said, they're all things that are coachable. I also think that it's just sort of like a 1-game instance. Like, I don't think any of those issues are things that have been problems with him in the past or will be problems with him in the future, So I'm not concerned about it. But, it's the same reason Harbaugh talked about this, I guess. He talked about, in the first press conference, I think it was, or maybe it was on Big Ten Network when he got interviewed there, but he felt like the team had been trying to play too perfect, that they were working towards perfection and it was holding them back a little bit. And I think that lends itself to what Tanner was saying about him pressing a little bit. But it's also the reason I left Michigan at number 1. Like Tanner said, I still feel like in my power rankings, I left them at number 1. Very, very hard to do considering Penn State and Ohio State have played well. Especially Penn State really wanted to move them up there. They're my 2 and 3. But the reason I left them there is because I feel like they're the same team that they were before, and it doesn't change anything for me, and I don't think it'll be an issue going forward.
Yeah, Harbaugh said something in the presser yesterday where he said, JJ McCarthy is a gunslinger, and we don't want to change that because there's a risk of overcoaching. And I actually think maybe this was a slight nod to what happened last year where they tried to turn JJ into more of a pocket passer, at least for the games that weren't like Penn State, Ohio State. If you remember, a lot of the games, it seemed like he was told not to run. And maybe that was to preserve try to limit injury. But, JJ does have that kind of dynamic Patrick Mahomes-esque like piece in him somewhere, and sometimes you see it. And so, yeah, I agree with Harbaugh. Like he if there's one position I trust him on more than any, it's quarterback, right? And so, his instincts I'm going to go with. Like I wouldn't want to change the way JJ is either, unless this becomes not just a one-off and it becomes a pattern against Rutgers, Nebraska. Then you might want to say, okay, it's time to course correct. But right now, not yet. And so, yeah, I just think we need to see, are we going to see more of what we saw the first two games, or more of this, and then kind of go from there?
Yeah, I think you're going to see what you saw in the first two games. Look, I'll come on here and let you know if I find that it's very concerning and this happens again. And, but and there's some comments in the chat right now about, game management and, he doesn't need to win the game. I disagree, because when you think about the teams that have won national championships with a game manager, Alabama, Georgia, they're much more talented than everybody else. Michigan is very talented, but I don't necessarily believe that they have that straight up talent edge over Georgia, over certain teams. So, I mean, he had to go win that Ohio State game last year, right? And obviously you can't go and play hero ball, which I agree with. But like, if Michigan wants to achieve its biggest goals, he's going to have to be let off the leash a little bit and be able to be a playmaker and make throws out of rhythm, outside the pocket. Now, look, Saturday was not great from his perspective in turning the ball over, but I don't think you want to turn him into Cade McNamara like he maybe was a little bit last year, right? If you want to beat Georgia, you have to have him be a difference maker in the passing game and in the running game. So I don't think just having him just sit in the pocket and throw it away when, things aren't open, like, you got to let him be JJ. If you want to get this team to that next level and do what we all want it to do, he has to be a difference maker. So like you said, you don't want to overcoach it. You don't, you want to maybe overcoach the throw it out of bounds, buddy. Like, you don't need to lob it up there. But hey, I mean, he was taking shots, and I think this was just a game where he pressed. I mean, I fully expect on Saturday he's going to come out and play very well. I think he's going to throw for at least a couple of touchdowns, no picks, very accurate, very efficient. Like, I just feel like we're going to look back at this as a blip on the radar. And I think some people look, it's game 3, so there's only been 3 games, and one of them has been pretty rough. But I don't know. I just don't really buy into the sky is falling, which I've seen from quite a few Michigan fans sitting at number 2 in the country, which is just objectively hilarious. But you got to let JJ be JJ. And this is maybe part of the growing pains that come with it. Maybe we thought that he had, taken that step to elite. But at the end of the day, he's still, third game in his junior year, and still got a lot to learn, a lot of room for growth. So I think this may be just part of that process.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, off the back of that a little bit. Harbaugh, he's coming back, right? Which we'll get into in a little. Maybe this will be a good transition. But Harbaugh's coming back, right? And when you talk about him pressing, I mean, JJ's guy is Jim Harbaugh. Like, that's the reason he's at Michigan, and that's his dude. So when you're missing that's like a blanket of comfort right there. That having him to, you go back to the sideline and your coach, who you're super tight with, can just sort of calm you down or just get you right, especially a former quarterback like Harbaugh, and a guy who's been doing it for so long, coaching as well. You're missing that. And I think maybe this wouldn't have happened. You might have thrown that first pick, and he might not have thrown the other 2 had Harbaugh been on the sideline, just to sort of ease that tension a little bit.
Yeah, I will say one thing we talked about on Michigan Wolverines Live when I was with Mark is we discussed blue chip ratios, and so Tanner, when you talked about the fact that JJ is going to need to be a dynamic player, there were 3 teams since 2010 that have won the national championship with actually a lower blue chip ratio than Michigan has at 54. So it was Auburn 2010, it was at FSU 2013, and it was Clemson 2016. What do all 3 have in common?
Well, star quarterback.
Extremely elite quarterback play, next level quarterback play. So to your point, Tanner, that is the only path that Michigan has, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think Michigan is extremely talented. But when I was talking through that, like Deshaun Watson at Clemson, came to mind, right? Like that was the reason they got over the hump, was because they had elite quarterback play, and you know, they were more talented and they won a national championship in 2016. So the recruits started to pour in a little bit, but even in 2018, Trevor Lawrence was a difference maker with that team, being able to make a lot of big time throws. So that's where I look at Michigan as, hey, they've won the Big Ten the last 2 years. They've beat Ohio State. They've gone to the playoff. They haven't won, you know, for various, you know, whatever different reasons. You know, against Georgia, it was just, they're way more physical and they had some big dudes, and Michigan just couldn't really hang. And against TCU, obviously had some turnovers, had, you know, the fumble at the goal line, had the 4th and goal that they didn't get off the Philly special or whatever the heck they ran. So I think you will need JJ to be more than just a game manager. He's got to be more than what he was last year. They could probably still win the Big Ten. Look, they could probably still win the Big Ten, beat Ohio State if he does what he does last year, 22 touchdowns, 5 picks, whatever those stats are. But I think if you want to see Michigan achieve its biggest goal, he is going to have those that leash a little bit longer, because he's going to make some mistakes, but he's hopefully going to make up for some big time throws and plays that normally wouldn't be made.
So before we get to the running game, which I think there's definitely some things to talk about there, we do have our first super chat. Thank you to Bizzer. Always likes to come in here with the Brad Pitt. And in this case, it's Dion. I think this was Deion Sanders is the truth. Which, hey, did anyone think Colorado was going to triple their amount of wins already in the season? I sure didn't. So, hey, it's notable.
Yeah, I mean, what Deion's doing there, you know, he gets his love, he gets his hate, but you have to respect what he's doing. I mean, that is incredible to be able to turn around a program that quickly. I don't think any of the teams that he's played are actually particularly very good. So that's going to be an interesting component when they play Oregon this weekend. But it's still some, you're playing Power 5 level competition, Nebraska, TCU, and Colorado State's not a bad team. So
right. Any comments on Deion, Tanner, before you?
Yeah, I mean, they should have lost that game, truthfully.
Yeah.
Colorado State outplayed them. They had no answer for the mesh concept. It felt like Michigan, Ohio State 2018. You know, I think, you know, obviously beat a team that went to the national championship last year in week 1, win an in-state rivalry, and, you know, beat the brakes off Nebraska. You know, sitting at 3-0. I don't know how much longer it's going to last, especially with Travis Hunter out. But I still, just in the trenches, I just don't know if they are, you know, built to I mean, the Pac-12 is legit this year. Like, it is like, there are a couple teams that I think could be playoff teams. I mean, I think Washington is one of the best teams in the country. Obviously USC with all their talent and Caleb Williams. You know, Oregon's kind of quietly sitting there, I believe, right outside the top 10 or maybe just inside the top 10. So it's going to be, I don't know their exact schedule, but I know they've got Oregon this week. They play USC. So they've got quite a schedule.
I mean, Oregon
missed out on Washington, but yeah. So you got, you know, a couple top 10 teams sitting on the schedule for you. So we're gonna find out, though. I mean, Shedeur is a stud. That game-winning drive was fantastic. So yeah, I'm you know, look, I like Deion Sanders. I could go without, though, like all the commercials somehow relating it back to Colorado. It's like, all right, like there are 133 Division I teams, like, you know, like, it's cool. I like Deion a lot, and I love what he's doing, but it's like, man, like, relax a little bit, please, maybe.
Yeah, it's personal, you know, it's personal. Okay, well, does every single, like, I think you're going to see a bit of a shift now that they're about to play the real, like, the really tough teams. I think you're going to see a shift in mentality a little bit, a little less chirpiness. That's my guess. But anyway, so back to, obviously, the run game, you know, has been a conversation that we've had for the last couple of weeks. And I do think that now Edwards has had a little bit more contribution. Obviously, Corum's still the feature back with 2 touchdowns. You did see that they rotated out Miles Hinton later in the game. They put Barnhart back at right tackle. They put Ladarius Henderson at left tackle, which is more in line with what we had predicted. we were actually, I think, pretty surprised that Miles Hinton was still at right tackle at this point in the season. So with that said, it did look like that both of our feature backs were showcased, Corum more so. We'll start with Nelson this time. What was kind of your take on the run game and what you saw?
Well, I think the number one thing that grabbed me was seeing Corum break out that 54-yard run. You know, he's talked about he feels quicker and he feels faster, and really, I think he showed it. You know, he didn't take that to the house, but he didn't have the angle there anyways, especially on a play like that where he had to bounce it outside after getting through the hole. So I honestly, I think it looks better, and I think that the Barnhart and Henderson tandem is what I wanted them to put out there in the first place. The thing I didn't understand was why it didn't happen until Saturday. And that's sort of the expectation that that's what's going to go out there against Rutgers, at least to start the game. That's the whispers. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think the run game's moving in the right direction. It looks pretty good. Michigan handed over a few possessions there with those interceptions. So maybe we see a little bit of a different score, and maybe the run game explodes a little bit more than that because they're able to not turn it over. Like, really, that's partly why JJ's stats are, you know, so mid, I guess. I mean, like, this was worst game of his career, arguably. I would say so. So I think that has an effect on it all too. So the run game looked good overall against a not very good team, but Rutgers will be a stiff test against the run, so that will be interesting.
Yeah, I thought the run game looked better. I thought Blake looks like Blake. I mean, I kind of said that last week, but like he really feels like he's back. And I also saw a tweet from one of my boys, Parker, that he has basically the same exact statistics through 3 games this year versus last year. I think he has 1 less touchdown. He has 6, and last year he had 7, but he also had 5 against UConn. So helping to puff the stats a little bit there. But yeah, I thought Donovan looked more decisive. Again, I really like what they're continuing to do with him. There was a really nice play, I think right after the big Blake run in the first drive, where it was a handoff to Blake and then he pitched it to Donovan on a little bit of a counter. I loved that play. So I like what they're doing, getting those guys involved. And I think real quick, just to touch on the O-line, I thought they looked better in the run game. Pass pro continues to give me a little bit of pause. It feels like they're just not communicating well. Like there was a couple times where McCarthy had pressure in his face, and it looked like it was just because they didn't communicate right, or maybe Donovan went out to run a route instead of blocking the linebacker coming up the middle. I think I noticed that once. So definitely some things to get shored up, and hopefully, with Sherman Moore not having 3 titles on his plate as head coach, offensive coordinator, and offensive line coach, that maybe that'll help. I don't know if that will, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see Ladarius Henderson. I liked what I saw from him Saturday, and I think we've seen Barnhart at right tackle after Trente Jones went down last year, so feel comfortable with him there. Still would prefer Trente just with his run blocking ability. Like he's a monster, and I don't know if he just can't pass pro, what the deal is, because he comes in as that 6-0 line and looks pretty good in the run game. So but yeah, overall O-line and the run game looked better. I thought the running backs looked pretty good too.
Yeah, I think that it's a good. I don't hate what it seems like they're going to do now, because with Ladarius on the left, Barnhart on the right, and then Trente coming in as that 6th. In my mind, they use 6-man personnel so much anyway that like I'm fine with that as long as we don't see Hinton anymore. Unless it's like 4th quarter garbage time again and we're up by like 40 points. I don't want to see him anymore. Like I think we've seen enough, and we can go with Ladarius and Barnhart and then Trente as the 6th guy. That's fine. And by the way, if Trente does improve, there's always the possibility of flipping that situation around, and then those 2 could flip. So just, I mean, I think it'll go through the season. And if one is looking better, you know how Harbaugh is, meritocracy. So
it's an interesting thing because I look at Hinton and I think of him as more left tackle. When I watch his footwork and I look at his size and his arm length, I mean, they're playing him at right, and maybe that's, the best. They would know, right? Clearly they know that's the best spot for him more than I would. But just like prototypically, he looks like a left tackle to me.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah, Donovan blew an outside blitz pickup. Yeah, there was one or two like that where he should have blocked.
There was one that came up. I think it was the A gap. It was right off. It was right off the center or guard. I can't exactly remember, but it was right at the middle, and that I think that might have been the sack that they took. So I don't know if that's JJ needed to tell Donovan, the O-line communicating back with Jay. Like I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that conversation looks like. Like we played in basically like a wing tee in high school, so I never really had those conversations when I was playing. So I have no idea kind of the level of who needs to know what in those scenarios. But yeah, definitely some things to clean up there, and you know, hopefully they can get that short up going into the Rutgers game.
Absolutely, and we want to thank Nick because Nick likes to do the $9.99 super chats, and yeah, sometimes we'll make some digs at he calls it third base Ryan Day. You know, so we always like to get the digs in there. That's always fun. And in this case, we'd like to see the JJ Loveland connection a little more. If you're going to throw a 50-50 ball, Colston is that dude. I agree 1,000,000%. And use him as a safety blanket because his talent and ability can bail JJ out if need be. Yeah.
I mean, I agree with that. That's also, you don't want JJ to become too reliant on him as well, because that's where that interception came, right? Instead of the throwaway, which maybe he was trying to throw it away. I'm not sure what was, but it looked like he was trying to get it to Loveland there. But nonetheless, I totally agree. I don't think there's a better jump ball receiver on this team. And Loveland can play. He doesn't have to play in the slot. He can play out wide, and get the mismatch with a corner on him and see what he can do, and just use his size. So I'd be interested to see more of that connection for sure. But I think it also brings a good change of pace with Roman as the more of the speedster on the team.
Yeah, I thought they had a nice connection. I think it was after the second pick. It was the drive after the second pick, and he went to Loveland, had like a 25-yard gain, nice throw in between the zone coverages, and then the next play is when he hit Roman, which was a rope on kind of, I don't know, I can't remember exactly the route. I was on the other side of the end zone, and I've only rewatched the game maybe once, but it was a rope on a deep route to Roman from JJ. So I think we've seen a good amount of Loveland. I think this game, though, there's only 44 offensive plays. It was a weird game just all around. Like there wasn't as many opportunities for guys to get the ball. They threw it 13 times and gave the ball to Bowling Green 4 times with the 3 picks and then the fumble on the kick return. So not a ton of opportunities to showcase. But I do think, Rutgers is pretty good against the run. So, maybe an opportunity for JJ to get out there and throw it around and gain some of that confidence back and involve some of these receivers in the passing game.
Yeah, one thing I did predict was going to happen, which we are seeing, Loveland in motion a lot. So Loveland's been in motion a lot in terms of play design, but they're using Barner and Bredesen, especially Bredesen, as a blocker. So it's kind of what I was thinking was going to happen. Loveland, they're trying to get him in motion. They're trying to get him used as a kind of a hybrid tight end wide receiver, and that's what they should be doing. I will say there's a couple of those motion ones that have looked a little weird in these first 3 games. There was one, I forget which first or second game, that was just like, it just didn't seem to work very well. I think they got to work on their timing a little bit there. But, I don't hate the idea of using him that way because, then obviously you can open up some real creativity in terms of RPOs and things like that. So